welcome back. We've now had three speakers. Thank you, Professor Ochefo, Professor Iga, and Richard Omowale Akinyemi, who just finished speaking. Our next speaker is a member of the House, Daniel Kamanga, a foremost African journalist, Kenyan, and leadership consultant. He also happens to be my boss in OAI, as he doubles as the editor-in-chief of the One Africa Journal, OAJ, which is due to make its maiden edition public in a week or two. Daniel will be taking us on the topic, the African Leadership Challenge. One of the issues that Africa has always had to deal with is leadership. He'll be sharing his thoughts on how we can surmount this challenge going forward. Daniel Kamanga, you've got 15 minutes. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate this opportunity. I'm so excited to speak on this Africa Day, and I want to thank Tim for giving all of us this opportunity to have this conversation. And Richard almost began to speak what I wanted to speak, and I was thinking that maybe I should just sit back and let him just share what I wanted to share. But I want to start by saying that we have a big team from Walter Sisulu University with Mr. Valile, who is part of the team there, and they are all watching us. They're part of this team, so I wanted to acknowledge them. Now, and allow me to start with Walter Sisulu University. Many people don't know Walter Sisulu and the role that he had in Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela is a much better known, but if you read the history of the political history of South Africa, you will see that there would be no Nelson Mandela without Walter Sisulu. Walter Sisulu is really the one who mentored Mandela. There's a reason why I'm saying this. And I want to quickly go into the topic that I was given, the African Leadership Challenge in the context of the African Union. Now, when Tim asked me to speak about this, my mind went to the African leaders that I admire, and I know many of you also admire, including Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Patrick Lumumba, and people like Thomas Sankara. And permit me also to mention two great African women, Ellen Sirleaf, the former president of Liberia, who was awarded a Nobel Prize for her nonviolent efforts to promote peace and the struggle for women's rights. She's the first female democratically elected head of state in Africa. And let me also speak about our countrywoman, the late Wangari Maathai, who was the first African woman to get a Nobel Prize for her contribution to sustainable development, democracy, and peace. And these great leaders, I think there's something that Richard spoke about. I hope I'll be able to connect the dots to these great leaders. And I think the way I connect the dots is that if you look at the common thread that made these Africans great leaders, it may give you a bit of an indication on how we can tackle the African leadership challenge. Now, in particular, if we look at the thing that unites them, you will see that there are some things that are useful and some that are very applicable to Vision 2063. Now, as we deliberate this, let's consider that almost 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25, making Africa the youngest continent. Now, I'm curious to know if the youth of Africa are truly represented in the Vision 2063. And I heard that there's some members of the African Union in the team, so it would be interesting to have a discussion on where the young people fit in this conversation. Now, this is important because if you, like me, or the people who are on this conversation, if you're in your 50s, in 2063, you'll be in your 90s, you know. And I'm saying this to emphasize that the issue we are discussing is more important for the next generation than for the current generation. Now, there are two things I see in this. First, this means that our generation needs to think very creatively on behalf of the next generation. Maybe even a little bit reckless and push the boundaries a little bit. Now, to be bold in what we propose as possible solutions. Now, second, we need to deliberate in how do we have an intergeneration conversation, and that's a conversation that Africa is not having. We're not doing really well in that. In many of the institutions, whether it's in politics, we see a lot of old people in so-called leadership positions. Now, for the rest of my presentation, I want to propose 3 things that can help move the needle with regard to African leadership challenge in the context of Vision 2063. Now, first, I would like to distinguish the whole idea of leadership transformation. I run an organization called Africa Leadership Transformation. Africa Leadership Transformation. We're talking about transformation of African leaders. And this is African leadership transformation is different from other kind of leadership interventions. And I hope that I will leave you with a very clear picture of the type of leaders we need to make the Vision 2063 a reality. The second point I want us to engage with is that leadership is accessible to everybody. And this is what Richard was emphasizing. So in fact, I would like to boldly say that we need to make leadership accessible through our education system, at the very least from secondary school. We should ensure that our young people are actually grounded in leadership. The third point that I'm going to make is that I want to call on Africans. Richard has talked about the people who are on this call, but I want to call on Africans to individually and collectively heed the call for leadership as their natural self-expression. And I'm shortly going to go into a little bit of more details. Now, there's been a lot of talk about COVID-19, but I think one of the things that COVID-19 did was it brought what is known as VUCA into our lives and into our homes. Now, VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, these things are no longer concepts. They're in our homes. We know what they look like. We know how they feel like. Now, if you think about the environment in which Africans find themselves right now, the context is very uncertain, it's multifaceted, and it's dynamic. Change is coming too fast, and the current leadership models are insufficient to cope with emerging demands. Now, COVID-19 has, for me, exposed the underbelly of leadership, not just in Africa, but all over the world. How do you lead in VUCA times? How do you lead in a world that most of what you are dealing with is unknown? So we need the kind of transformative leadership that can help bring about the kind of knowledge that doesn't even exist today. Now, we can't tackle challenges like youth unemployment with the same leadership mindset of yesteryears. The challenges of terrorism, the challenges of insecurity and corruption require a different kind of leadership. The issues of climate restoration require bold leadership. But at the moment, it seems like this kind of leadership is like looking for a needle in the haystack. Now, I say that the vision of the Old Foundation is leadership transformation, but it's not just leadership transformation. It's leadership transformation as a key to an Africa that works for everyone. So at the moment, there are many spaces in Africa that are not working for everyone. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see that what is not working, if you want things to start working, the key challenge is leadership. So if you transform leadership, you'll begin to get the solutions that you're looking for. Now, let me go back a little bit to the leaders that I spoke about. Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Eileen Sirleaf, Wangari Maathai, and many, many others. Now, one of the things that I discovered about these leaders is their ability to speak the promised land as a possibility when it did not exist. They spoke the promised land as a possibility when it did not exist. Nelson Mandela saw the possibility of defeating apartheid when everything that he said seemed impossible. Wangari Maathai saw a country covered with trees when politicians had stripped our mountains and the catchment areas of all trees. Why did the Belgian assassinate Patrice Lumumba? He not only resisted Belgian colonialism and corporate interests, but he saw an Africa united. It has been mentioned that everyone who saw an Africa united somehow was landed into some kind of problems, and many of them were assassinated. Even Martin Luther, his dream of equality of all races was conjured out of nothing, at a time when one would be a lunatic to even imagine this. Mahatma Gandhi invented the possibility in his speaking of colonial Britain out of India and without violence. It was the speaking of these leaders that brought forth new possibilities and therefore new realities. This is what we mean by transformation. When we speak about leadership transformation, we are speaking of a language that generates a new reality. Transformation is not merely a function of speaking. It is transforming life itself as a function of our conversations. We need leaders who design conversations that bring about transformation in politics, in education, in music, in the arts, in technology, in trade, and in industry, virtually in all areas. Now, I am so proud to be a member of the One Africa Initiative, because what Tim did was to begin to shift conversations and to shift conversations in different areas. This is what true leadership is about. When I think about a leader, I think about someone like Tim and many others who are leaders. And I think this is important. This is a new strategy that we'll need to adopt. Now, having distinguished what leadership transformation is, the second point is that leadership, especially transformative leadership, as we have defined it, is accessible to everyone. We can joke that leadership transformation is available to everyone because everyone has a mouth. However, we want to make the point that African leaders have made leadership an exclusive club. In my country, Kenya, if you are a clergyman and you point out some of the problems in the politics, the politicians will tell you, you should stay out of politics. You should focus on spiritual matters. Leave politics to politicians. What these politicians are telling you is that leave us to eat on our own, leave us to destroy the country, and yet you yourself live in that particular country. Now, many Africans see politics or political leadership as a dirty game, something played by an exclusive group of people. Politics or leadership is seen merely as an access to power and resources. When political leaders want others to stay out of politics, they are merely keeping you away from the resources. Now, this kind of thinking about leadership is actually the problem with our continent. Okay, so we have been erroneously wired to think of leadership, and this keeps many excellent Africans from leadership. Now, this is why it's very important for us to have leaders in the fourth industrial revolution, leaders in education and academia and in different spheres. Now, when Mandela saw the possibility of the end of apartheid and a free South Africa, few knew him as a leader. When Gandhi was not even considered a leader until millions bought into his vision. Who we often call leaders are not leaders. They are people holding various positions in society. A leader does not need a position to lead. As I've said, Tim is a leader, not because he holds the position of president of OAI, but because at a time when it seemed impossible to bring Africans together for a common cause, he did it. Now, consider this. The vision of OAI is to birth an Africa that has united her people, all of African descent and resources that have transformed her into a continent at par with any other. Now, you have to be crazy to have such a vision. Now, Tim is saying that Africa is like America, is like Europe, is like Japan. Now, this is the kind of leadership that is required to bring about Vision 2023, to dare speak forth a possibility. And many people have embraced that possibility. There are many people who have brought their time, treasure, and talent to this particular possibility. Now, this leads us to the third suggestion. Now that you know what transformation is, and now that you know that leadership is accessible to everyone, the next step is to hit the call for leadership as your natural self-expression. You can bring about transformation as a clerk in government. You can transform a country as a mother. You can change a country as a student. Every human being can make a contribution. It's your godly mandate to find and redefine this contribution. It's the key to life's fulfillment. Manifesting this requires leadership. You can transform yourself, your family, your community, your country, your continent, or the world. Let us get out of this nonsense we call leadership in Africa. You cannot be a spectator as so-called leaders muddy the waters that you are drinking. When you heed the call for leadership, you know that the buck stops with you. No one is exempt from this call. If you consider yourself an African, whether like our friend, you are in Africa, whether you're in the diaspora, whether you're African American, whether you're Caribbean or Brazilian, wherever you are, if you are an African, you have a responsibility to Vision 23 and beyond. And as they say in South Africa, Kenako, our time has come. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We know you are one of us, but you've shared some things that have struck me. Two things you said that caught my attention, and I think that's where you started from. You said the challenge for our current generation is to think creatively on behalf of the next generation. That's to actualize Vision 2063. So our own task is to be creative in visioning of Africa Africa in 2063. You also talked about the need for intergenerational conversation, which a lot of it is not currently taking place on the continent. And I don't know how we'll crack that code, because if the guys who are supposed to be running things in 2063 are not part of the conversation now, then we have an uphill task ahead of us. Thank you so much. We'll take a short pause now, and when we return, we'll take our next speaker